So entrepreneurs usually are rebels. They're going it alone. But in some cases, you need to develop that leadership and that sales quality to keep you going. We've got the person who has lived it and has climbed the ladder to success. And let's get into the show. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Bruce. How are you? Good morning.
Good. So are you in Arizona or in Utah?
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona area, so it's morning time still.
Okay. Yeah, because I used to live in Arizona, and I know we never had issues with the clock, but the rest of the country did.
That's right. But we did get rid of daylight savings time, and so we are now on California time, Pacific.
Yep.
Yeah.
So part of the year, you're on California time, and part of the year you're on Utah time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so your background has pretty much started from scratch. Even though your dad built the company, he didn't put you as a senior VP on day one. So let's talk a little bit about what the Little Giant Ladder company is and how it's got started.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So I was actually born in Germany, and then we moved back to Utah. My dad was in the military. He started selling life insurance and actually opened up an office in Germany again when I was 7. And so our whole family moved to Germany. That's where my dad saw the original design of the Little Giant, what became the Little Giant Ladder. He became friends with the inventor, the guy that was building them in Germany, and he decided, wow, this is a cool product. I'd like to see what I could do in America with it. And so we moved back to Utah. My dad started buying, well, he started out with buying one container full of ladders and going door to door, selling them toe to toe. And that's how the whole thing started.
So you kind of developed your sales expertise from your dad, or is it something that you learned on your own? Because in the beginning of the company, you weren't put in a sales position. You started off, as most people with a family business, working the day shift pretty much.
Yeah, so I was very young. I was 10 years old. My brother was 12, and we started working after school. And then in the summers, and my brother always jokes around and said that my dad violated all the like child labor laws back in the day. But yeah, we started really young. I remember my first job there was kind of cleaning up like the restrooms, the shop, and then we would put together like the instruction manuals, put those all together and kind of collate them and then staple them and then put them, they would put one in with every ladder. But that was kind of how it started. And then from there, it progressed into manufacturing, learning all the different positions in manufacturing, shipping. My dad was pretty wise, real smart. He had us work real hard and learn every part of the business. And then, as we got older and got more responsibility, we'd worked into customer service and then sales, operations, those types of things. And so ended up learning just so many different parts of the company, but spent most of my time really in sales and training, hiring, training salespeople. Spent about 2 million miles on Delta Airlines, flying all over the place. So it was quite an adventure.
Yeah, and so is this piece familiar to you? Is this one of the very first pieces you learned how to manufacture?
Yes, the work platform. So kind of what happened with those is I was in high school, and junior high and high school, I learned how to do welding and worked a lot in like metal shop and wood shop and those types of things. And so those really helped me, because when Little Giant came around, after school, I would come, home from school and run to work, and I'd actually weld those platforms. And I did a lot of those work platforms. Those were made out of steel at the time. They still are. And then I learned how to weld aluminum, which is it's not easy. It's a little bit more tricky than welding the steel. And actually did that for quite a few years, just welding ladders. And that was, we had these jigs that they were dual-sided jigs, and they would load the rungs and then the channels in, and then you would weld one side, and then he would take the guy that was loading the welding jigs would take the other one off and then put another one on, and then they'd spin it, and you just keep doing it all day long. It was quite tedious, but learned a lot about it. Really helped to know how the ladders were made when you went out to sell them to people. And, because they'd ask you, well, why do you do this? Why do you do that? And so if you knew how they were built, it did help you especially when competition came around. People would ask you, what are the differences? You could explain, why we did this and they did that type of thing.
Yeah, but also it helped you get to know your co-workers, and how that helped develop you to be a better leader.
Yeah, that's true. My dad, one thing that was really unique about my dad is he was very hands-on. We had, when I retired, we had over 400 employees. But one thing that I really loved about my dad is he knew every employee by name. He knew something about them. He would walk through the shop every day, and he could greet these employees by name. And so I, got to the point where I knew everyone by name as well, because of my dad's wonderful example. And, people really like to know that you know who they are and that you value them as employees. And that was one thing that my dad was very, very good about, was, giving his employees the recognition that they deserved. And also he would build, I would say my dad was in the ladder business, but he really was a builder of people. And those people helped him to build ladders. And so he had this ability to see people and also to see like their potential, and then he would help them to, to rise to their abilities.
Yeah, I understand, working with some companies that we work with, the culture is so important, and the culture pretty much comes from the top down. Yeah. And it sounds like your dad was a fantastic person. It sounds like you inherited some of that same culture and the same feeling towards people. You had other people in the family as well. How did they, because it's a family business, and I know there are issues with family businesses, how did that dynamic work out?
Yeah, so the culture at Little Giant, just really quickly, it was very unique. I would say more like a family. My dad really started the business so that we could work with him, and then people just came and said, "Can you give me a job?" And so he hired a lot of his friends and people that really didn't have a chance, that other companies wouldn't take chances on. But the culture was very family oriented, very unique. But hey, working with family is, wow, that can have its complexities. I mean, there's no question about that. My dad used to say, because I had my brother there, my two sisters worked there, my uncle worked there, and several cousins. And my dad used to say that he would be fair with everyone, but things couldn't be equal. And what he meant by that was, just because we were siblings or cousins or whatever, there were different positions in the company that paid different amounts of money. And so things would always be fair, but they couldn't be equal. In other words, if my brother was the CEO of the company and I was, the sales manager or whatever, obviously, he would make more money than I would. And so, it was not easy working with family, but, and there were a few that left along the way. But it was interesting to say the least, but excuse me. But, like one thing we tried to do as a family was, we tried to, at family get-togethers, we tried not to talk about the company and just basically, enjoy each other as a family and not talk about the business.
So it got Wes Quiet is now quoting you. So that looks like a great tweet out there. And so let's catch up with some of the comments. Here's Wes again, and hi JR.
Hey, JR, how are you?
And Sean, we're talking about ladders and how the mechanisms and keeping us safe. And nepotism. It's a way to business that were successful back in the day. And so you're also talking about building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that work both inside the company and outside the company as you grew your sales?
Well, my dad was, he had this little saying. He would say, if it's not a good deal for everyone around the table, then it's not a good deal. Excuse me. And one thing I really liked about my dad was he was so fair. In other words, you know, we would be in meetings with like a distributor or a vendor, and you know, if they got the lion's share or we got the lion's share, he would talk about that. And one thing, you know, I mean, everybody's in business to make money, but my dad was very fair, and I liked the fact that, you know, if we were in negotiations with someone and we got you know, the lion's share of it, my dad would say, hey, this isn't right for us to get that. It's got to be good for everybody around the table. And that's pretty rare in business nowadays. I mean, people are really out to looking out for number one, but my dad was real fair, and he always made it a good deal for everybody that was around the table. So that was one of my favorite sayings, is if it's not a good deal for everybody around the table, it's not a good deal. So he was very fair, very fair.
And he got to start pretty much working door to door, selling from the business car, basically, right? Yeah.
So in 1972 is when the company started. And remember, you know, as the economy went down into the mid to late 70s, how it kind of tanked and we had high interest rates, and that was during the Carter administration. And so here's my dad. He's bringing. Well, the funny thing is he went around to all his friends and pre-sold that first order, that first container order. And then he said when he came back when the ladders arrived, he went back to every one of them and said, hey, I've got your ladder. And he said probably 80% of the people said, oh, you know, my son got sick, or my daughter got married, or I lost my job. And so everybody pretty much that said they'd buy a ladder bailed on my dad. And so he had to go out and pretty much resell this whole container full of ladders. And so he did that by, the only way he knew how was to at first just go door to door to businesses, to homes, you know, friends, different things like that. And then as the company, you know, evolved, he started off with trade shows and fairs, home and garden shows, things like that. But my dad knew exactly in the beginning how many ladders he had to sell every day, or he was out of business. And so he kind of talks about this funny story where he had to sell, you know, he'd sold his quota for the day, but he needed one more ladder. And he's going around talking to people. It's getting late at night. And he says he ends up at this guy's house, and the guy has one arm. He's a one-armed man. And he goes, I've got to sell him this little giant. And the guy says, if you can convince me that I can manipulate this ladder with one arm, you know, I'll buy it. And so my dad always joked and said, we were down on the ground, me and this guy, and we were wrestling with this ladder. He says, I was using my chin, my shoulders, my legs, and we were both trying to do it. And he says, I ended up convincing him, and the guy bought a ladder. So one day his last sale was to a one-armed man. And if you've ever seen the Little Giants, you know, I mean, there's buttons and things to pull and push. And so he was a good salesman.
Yeah. So I was on your Instagram page, and I saw a picture of your truck, but we're not going to get into trucks or cars. Mm-hmm. But I followed the hashtag, which was Little Giant, and I came across this post from a fan from Alaska, mm-hmm. who, and that's one of the things about the company is you've got a fan base beyond the company. You've got people out there who are pretty much selling it for you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so one thing that we did do very, very well at Little Giant was so my dad talks about, he created really a whole new category for ladders and built an incredible name. For example, Bruce, when you go into the grocery store and you're looking for facial tissues, you don't say, hey, where's the facial tissues, right? You say, where are the Kleenexes? That's how strong the brand of Kleenex is. And so Little Giant is very similar. When we launched the infomercial, you know, quite a few years ago, the company was really struggling, and this infomercial ended up being a huge success, in so much that people were walking into Home Depot and Lowe's and these other stores, and they were saying, we want a Little Giant. They didn't say we want the multi-purpose ladder. They would say, we want the Little Giant. And it's kind of interesting how at that time we got into Home Depot. Home Depot had brought another ladder that was similar to ours, half the price, made in China. And they, you know, and they had that in there, and people would actually walk in and say, hey, we just saw the infomercial. We want the Little Giant. And they'd say, we have the ladder that's half the price with X brand on it. And people would say, we don't care what the price is, we want the Little Giant. And so it forced Home Depot to actually bring in our ladder at the $359 price. And then they had a knockoff that was half the price. And they were getting, I mean, the best of both worlds. People would come in, want the Little Giant, and some people didn't care about the brand or the price. They would buy the cheaper one. But there were those people that said, we want the Little Giant, we want the, the one that's on TV. So we really created a strong brand that way.
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how did you get into retail? Was it more of a pull from your customers who were looking for it, or was it more of a push from the company?
Well, that's a great question, and it's really funny how that worked out because, we were going around, as I mentioned, doing the trade shows, the home and garden shows, and the state fairs, and a big distributor out of Los Angeles, California, came up to my dad at a show and said, we would like to resell these. And my dad said, well, we don't have a resale program, so we're just not doing that at this time, and so we can't do it. But this company just persisted, and they sent in, I believe they sent in an order for like 100 or 200 ladders. And my dad sees the order come in, and he's like, holy cow, this is that company I talked to at the LA County Fair. So he called him and said, hey, you're serious about this? And he said, yes, we're serious. We want to sell these. And so my dad then had to create a resale program, and that's how it started.
And so has it made it easier for the growth of the company, or were you still a direct sales company?
Well, eventually, what's interesting is that we don't do those home and garden shows anymore. And that's partly because of, I would say, the retail of the retail sales, but mostly because of the internet and the web and everything. And before, when we would go around and do the trade shows, we kind of have a package deal, and our distributors didn't really mind that, but because we were higher than they were, and they could match the price or do their own thing. But with the creation of the web, the World Wide Web and everything, and the internet, it really changed the way that we went to market, with the Amazons and those types of things. And so eventually the home and garden business and everything, and the trade show business, and people ended up buying, on their cell phones anyway. They could check prices really quick. And so that kind of business just kind of went away, and we went more into a retail and online style of sales.
You also mentioned the infomercials that people were asking for the Little Giant, and price was not an issue. In this day and age of Amazon and comparison shopping, how have you positioned, or how has the company positioned the ladder where price isn't an issue, and how you distinguish yourself that way?
Another great question. Little Giant is a real strong brand, kind of like Bose, it's like a Bose headphones, or I'm just going to name a few companies like that, to where we actually we had a MAP pricing program, and we still have that program in place to where, a minimum advertised price. And so, retailers can, they can sell it for whatever they want. We can't tell people what to sell it for, but we do, I think we still follow that MAP program where, they pretty much have to advertise. Everybody kind of advertises about the same price. So that's really helped keep the value up. But the quality's there, and back when I was still with Little Giant, my last 5 years in the company, we opened up this brand new market in the telecom industry with like the cable companies, Comcast and Cox and all these other big cable companies, Charter. And we were actually selling our extension ladders, which were double the price to the cable business, but they were half the weight as well. And so we brought a ladder from 100 pounds down to 50 pounds, which were saving the companies millions of dollars in workman's comp claims and injuries and things. But we were able to sell it at twice the price. So it was pretty incredible.
Well, also the weight difference helps in shipping too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it keeps shipping down and all that. But where it would really save these big companies was in injuries, back injuries, shoulder injuries. And then, they were dropping these big heavy ladders, and they would smash people's cars and go through windows and houses. And so all of those things were really costing these companies big time money. And so they reduced their claims by so much that even at twice the price, they were saving millions and millions of dollars by going with Little Giant.
And so part of your journey through the company was eventually getting into sales. How did you develop that sales strategy?
Well, my dad designed really the presentation, the sales program. And then, we kind of took it from there and, kind of grew it a little bit. My dad had this philosophy and he was very serious about it. One of his sayings was, you can tell a customer anything you want to, as long as it's the truth. And so we taught our salespeople, hey, we're going to, have integrity when we sell. We're not going to put other products down. We will always tell the truth. And, but my dad had such an incredible work ethic. He was such an example to everyone. And so we took that, his philosophy of, hey, let's tell the truth. Let's explain the differences, but not put our competition down. And it served us real well because other competitors came in and, they would tell people, oh, they're overpriced, this and that. And we always took the high road. One thing that I always worked on when I was in sales was, develop relationships with people, help people, listen to the customer. And, that's kind of what worked well for me was, develop a relationship of trust and then listen to the customer, help them solve their problems. And, I'm very, very good friends even to this day of customers that I've dealt with for years. In fact, that first customer in that distributor in California, in Los Angeles, they're still one of our customers, and he and I are very, very good friends to this day. So along the way, we built a lot of friendships and then sold a few ladders too as well.
That's actually, I think, isn't that your motto? Building friendships over.
So there's a little sign out on Little Giant on the front of the building that says, if you concentrate on building the business and not the man, you will not succeed. But if you build the man, you achieve both. And so really that was my father's philosophy is, hey, let's build the men and women of the company. Let's help them to grow. Let's help them to learn and become, more than they were, and help them to really see their potential. And along the way, they help us build product and sell it. And it served us very, very well. My dad was a really smart guy, but he was so good with people, people were so loyal to him because of the way he treated them and with kindness and just the way he took care of his employees. Then they in turn, helped him to build a big company, and we did well.
And those stories are not going to be lost into the ether. Someone, I know we have a mutual friend who inspired you to put this into more concise terms as opposed to just your verbal storytelling.
Yes, that's true. So, I retired at the end of 2019 after 47 years with the company. And, my father passed away 10 years ago. Yeah, 9-10 years ago. And he had started to write a book about, how he took this company from nothing and turned it into a, multi-million dollar company. So he passed away, he had this manuscript, and I thought, this story really needs to be told because it is a very, very interesting story and a successful story, obviously, one that has ups and downs, highs and lows, and but yet could help other business owners and entrepreneurs and people like that. And so I thought about maybe I should try to finish this book, and none of my siblings really had a desire to do that. And then I had known Jeffrey Gitomer, who you were talking about. He's written 17 books.
Yep.
A bunch of successful, I think the number one selling sales book of all time. But so Jeffrey and I were friends for many years. He did some training with me at Little Giant, and and as I started talking to him about these stories about my dad, he says, this story really needs to be told. And he he almost forced me into doing this. You know, he's like, you can't just sit around and play golf all day and do nothing and play with your cars. He's like, this will be good for you, and it'll also be good, obviously, for the world to hear about your dad and his story and the principles that really made this company great. And then you can also, along with the book, he said, you can teach these core principles and values and turn it into a little training program. So we're working on this book now. It's called Giant Success. And Jeffrey's helping me, guiding me, and then he'll be writing the foreword to the book. And it'll go into print probably in December, and then we'll be releasing it right around March 5th, which is my dad's birthday. So I'm pretty excited about this, yeah.
So for those who want more information, you can just go to your website and you can get notified when the book is released.
Exactly.
But there's also more information on there besides just a book release about who you are and what you do. So I find this really interesting as well. That you've moved on into your own pursuits with sales training and consulting and speaking.
Yep. Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of that, and do quite a few of these podcasts, every week sometimes, and a few, quite a few every month. But also branched out a little bit into real estate, multifamily housing, and property management, and some other things that are going pretty well. And it's a lot different business from the manufacturing and sales and marketing side, but business is business. We have great employees, and I have two partners that have the same philosophies that we did and my dad did, and we hire good people, we take good care of them, and they help us to grow our new business as well.
Because a lot of times people say you're a self-made millionaire, but there are so many people behind you or with you. So how do you, in talking about your partnership, how do you choose partners?
Well, I had known these two gentlemen that I'm involved with now in Boar Investment Group for quite some time. In fact, we went to church together, and so we became friends, and we served in some church positions together. And the one gentleman, his name's Robert, he said, we're going to be business partners together someday. He was just adamant about it. He would tell me that all the time. He's like, we're going to be partners. And I'm like, why? How can you be so sure that, we're going to be business partners? And you know what? It ended up working out that way. And but these are two gentlemen that I trust completely. And they have the same, I guess, business ideals and that I have, and so it was easy to become partners with these two gentlemen because they have a lot of the same ideals and the ethics and things like that, and that's really important. And
did you choose them because they had the same skill set as you, or do you have a diverse skill set?
These guys are experts at what they do, so I chose to become in business with them, to be involved in business with them, because they really are experts in this new business. I have no idea, what the things that they do. I just don't have the skill set that they have in this current market with the housing that they do. But I'm learning a lot more about it. And surprisingly, we did very well through COVID. I was a little bit nervous about that, but all of our rental places are in Utah, and we did not have anyone that didn't pay us during COVID. So everyone paid their rent, which was good, because I've heard a lot of stories about New York and Los Angeles where a lot of landlords and owners did not get paid, rent. So we were very fortunate.
Yeah. So I've heard of a REIT, which is like what, a real estate investment trust. Is that similar to this, or is this a little bit more deeper, where you combine your assets into a pool and distribute that?
Yeah, no.
Although this isn't, and getting into a quick disclaimer, this is not a offer to buy or sell. This is just information only, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So what happened was I had about 6 or 7 rental properties myself. And then my two partners had a bunch of apartments in their property management company. And then when I ended up selling Little Giant, we kind of just took everything and formed a new company. I put my properties in, they put their properties in, and then we combined, a bunch of things and formed this new corporation. And so we're all 1/3 partners, and everything's going well. So far, so good. And it gives me a lot of flexibility. I don't have to go to work every day. I'm involved, I know what's going on in the company, but these two gentlemen are about 15 years younger than me, and they still have a lot of fire in them, and they know the business, and they're doing a great job running the company.
So you still have time for golf and cars?
Still have a little bit of time for that, working on the book, and still do a lot of church service and different things like that. So, a lot of people say, what do you do all day long? But I manage to stay pretty busy, and, things are going well.
Yeah. Speaking of church, you mentioned, we were talking earlier, you mentioned how you were kind of a shy child or youngster teen, and how going door to door kind of brought you out of your shell.
Yeah.
Is that one of the keys to selling, is just getting either the door closed in your face or a lot of no's?
Yeah, that was, I always tell people, they say, how did you learn to work with people so well? And where did you get where did you learn people skills? I learned a lot from my father. He was very good with people, as we mentioned before. He didn't take no for an answer, but when I was 19, I went on a mission for a couple years for my church, and man, door to door, knocking on doors all day long, talking to people about religion. I was so afraid, of anyone opening the door because I was very shy. Mm-hmm. But boy, you learn a lot about people. You learn how to work with people, and my communication skills, my shyness went away quickly. And by the time I went home after 2 years, I was a totally different person. I just learned so much, and was grateful for that time that I had to kind of come out of my shell a little bit and learn about a lot about people. And I learned that most people are really good people. I was in the Midwest. I was in North and South Dakota for 2 years, and I learned that people are very good to us, and they were very nice. There was a few that didn't really, weren't interested and were a little bit maybe on the rude side, but most people were very kind. Even if they weren't interested, they would just, would be kind about it. And so I learned that there was a lot of good people in the world, and even if they weren't of my faith, many of them were probably better than I was, so.
Yep. So a lot of it is the coming out of your shell. And is there an age limit to that? I mean, if you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s and you've pretty much been a to yourself type person, do you still believe that you can come out of your shell even at later ages?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, there's public speaking courses, there's Toastmasters. There's a lot of things that you can do to, to work on yourself and to improve your social skills. The thing today that's bad is maybe it's not so bad. I mean, these things right here, right? We have all of these things at our fingertips, but a lot of the young people don't talk to each other anymore. They just text each other. And so I'm glad I grew up in the time that I did. And don't get me wrong, cell phones are great, but I'll see a couple. I'll even see a couple like out to dinner, and they both got their nose in their phone, and they're like on a date. I'm thinking you guys should be talking to each other. But so I think that we kind of live in this society now, and the young people don't have the communication skills that necessarily we do or we did. Because we grew up, we didn't really have phones. We had phones that were on the wall.
Yeah, but you didn't take them with you.
Yeah.
Call me later because I'll be home later.
Yeah, and so I think that the new cell phones are great, but I think that people need to put the phones down and talk to each other like they did back in the days when I grew up. And I think that that skill, that communication, that face-to-face is something that the young people really struggle with today. And, it's easy just to pick up the to text each other. But I still like to talk to people on the phone. I do a lot of that, and I think it's important.
And then we got a comment here from your brother, from another mother.
Yeah. Ken. Oh yeah, Ken Walls and we Marco Polo each other all day long.
And again, I think Ken does this as well as going live and this face-to-face, because I was in Arizona, but that was what, 20, 30 years ago. And now you're there. So there's a difference of space and time, but now we're here together. I think so. Technology does have advantages. The fact that we can talk face to face almost in a virtual reality. But again, face to face in person, I think is still preferred. You get more of that body language. And again, you're looking more at, instead of looking at the green dot, you're sometimes looking down at the person. And then and also you're looking at yourself, but in real life, do you usually hold up a mirror as you're talking to somebody else? You don't.
Yeah. Ken Walls is, he's really mastered the live presentations with his academy and everything. And during COVID, those people that, did what you're doing now, the podcasts, the go lives, in fact, Little Giant, one thing they did very well was, since everything got shut down, we had, probably 30, 40, 50 sales guys out on the road. And what they did was they took that budget from the sales travel budget, and they built these 2 new studios, and they called it Little Giant Live. And so they were able to just go right into the live streaming, and they would make appointments with all of their customers, and then just do live through Zoom or Google Meets or whatever, how they did it. And they have some pretty impressive studios there and they were able to just continue on. And the companies that have been doing things like that. And I'll tell you what, when I first went on some of these podcasts, I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of scared, but as you do more and more of them, you get more comfortable, and you can continue to improve.
Yeah. It's like going door to door.
Exactly.
It's just going podcast to podcast.
Yeah, and you have to embrace this is the new, I guess the new normal. I mean, will people start traveling again? Companies start traveling and doing all that? Yes, I think so, but maybe not to the extent that it was before. I mean, and I think a lot of companies are going to have people working from home. They saved a lot of money, they had to adapt, and so this live thing is for real.
Yeah, it also saves a lot of time, because instead of setting up one appointment in the morning and one appointment in the afternoon, it's like 6 appointments in the morning and 8 appointments in the afternoon.
Oh yeah, so much more productive. I mean, if I fly to Chicago, and by the time I get there and get my car, in one day I can maybe only see 1 or 2 customers, and then with traffic, as traffic's just terrible there, maybe I can only see 3, 4 customers a day. Like you said, with this, you could do 10 or more, and do these at all hours of the day and night if you wanted to, for sure.
And you can reach across countries. Because here it is. It's what, coming up on noon in Chicago and 6 o'clock in London. So London's just ending their workday, but you can still conduct business there.
Yeah, it's incredible. This technology we have nowadays with, even on the phones, what we can do is just incredible.
So excellent. It's been great information. Great to catch up with you. Enjoy the Arizona weather. I hope it's under 100 degrees today.
It's, it got up to, just about a week ago, it got up to like 118, and everybody said, this is my first summer here, and everybody said, wow, it's normally not this hot so fast, but now it's back down to like 105, and everybody's like, doesn't it feel good? I'm like, it's still hot, but it is nice, and there's no snow. But no, I do appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, and I thank you for allowing me to be here. It's been great.
Yep. So my time in Arizona, in Phoenix, it's a dry heat. Yes, but it's still hot.
Yeah, that's what Ken Walls always says. He's like, you don't complain. You don't have any humidity. It's a dry heat. He goes, you can be out golfing in 110 degrees weather. So he'll always tell me I need to, quit complaining. Yeah.
Yep. So next time you have to play golf along the East Coast with a high humidity.
Oh yeah, I mean it. Like in Florida, I've played golf in Florida before, and or even where Ken is in Ohio. I mean, it is just the humidity kills you. Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. It's been great.
Bruce, I appreciate it, and have a great day.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all for watching. And if you enjoyed what you saw, please subscribe and share. Thank you. Bye.